I just got a notice on my phone that
I'm live.
I is live.
Ah, that's the best part. That's the best part about all this social media stuff is that everything is instant.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Everything is instant.
I'm trying to turn my ringer off. That's why you lost me.
Ah, no worries.
I should be back now, live and ready to roll.
I just want to make sure all our pages are connected. Connected. Oh yeah, there we go. Let's reset that one more time, and then we are coming over here. And we are back! Here I am, Fly Navarro, with the No BS World Tour. Getting joined in by the man, the myth, the legend. Nope, that's not Santa Claus. That's Captain Bouncer Smith. What's going on, Captain Bouncer?
Well, I got news for you. I've played Santa Claus on many occasions, so don't be so short.
I'm not selling nobody short around here. It's just so funny because once I switch the button before it goes into the twin screen, here's this white bearded gentleman on my screen. I'm like, man, you look like Santa Claus. That is awesome. Captain Bouncer, how are you today, sir?
Today is a very, very bad day, Fly. We were told we couldn't fish from March 19th, and then we didn't know when it was going to change, when it was going to change, and then it was April 30th. You can go fishing again, and boy, we were fired up, and we were sold out for the whole month of May, filled up with charters, as many as we could possibly want to run, and everything went great for what was it, about 10 days, and on the last day that we fished in the ocean, we had an epic day. We caught a blue marlin first thing in the morning, a big barracuda, a bunch of dolphin, and late in the afternoon we caught a couple of big tunas and a sail, and then the wind blew. And today, finally, the wind was down to where we could fish again, and we met our charter at the dock, and we're just getting ready to pull out of the slip, and here comes a code enforcement officer. You are in violation of the City of Miami Beach COVID-19 restrictions, and you are not allowed to operate a charter out of Miami Beach. And I said, well, then I'm going to take these people for free. And he said, you got them here on the pretense of a charter, and therefore you cannot take these people fishing for free. Mom, dad, teenage son, and little sister cannot go out on your boat from Miami Beach.
Come on, man.
Then we did a mad scramble trying to find a place to pick them up outside of Miami Beach, which the code enforcement officer said was fine with him. And we struck out 3 or 4 times and had to send them home. What a heartbreaking way to start the day.
That's a horrible way to start or end a day. And you've been running charters pretty much nonstop, haven't you?
And what time period are you talking about?
Since this whole COVID-19 started, how has it affected you? Did you shut down at all, or?
We shut down on March 19th, and we were shut down until April 30th, and our April 30th charter had to switch dates, and from May 1st to May 31st, we've been sold out.
That's awesome.
We lost 3 days this week to weather. So
we had that little tropical depression move through. Actually, it skirted really close to you guys down there.
Yep, and it may throw a lot of ground swells into the mid-Atlantic states, but the good news is it's out of our hair anyway. So
I'm just sharing this across a bunch of pages. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking me, hey, I heard you're going to put Bouncer on. You're putting Bouncer on. And I'm like, Bouncer asked, and he requested. It's not, I'm putting you on. You wanted to come on. I wanted to have you on. It's great to have you on.
Well, let's straighten out the record, Fly. 10 days ago, we talked about me coming on, and I got preempted by a tile fish trip.
Yes, you did.
So
You
we
lost.
waited a little while, but
You
when it comes to a chance to go fishing, who's counting?
Yeah, well,
Because I wasn't available for days because I was going fishing.
Well,
So.
listen, that's exactly, my conversation. I don't know if you saw when we had the talk with Carl Allen, who bought Walkers. He called me up, or he sent me a message on Thursday or Friday, and he's like, "Hey, how does Wednesday next week sound for the live?" And I says, "You know what, Carl? Can I answer you on Monday?" And he's like, "Sure, not a problem." So come Sunday, one of his people called me up, and they're like, "Hey, Carl wants to have a conference call tomorrow." I said, "Sure, not a problem." And we have the conference call, and I said, "Hey, just so you know, we're good to go on Wednesday." He goes, "Did you have something else booked?" I go, "No, I was just waiting for the weather forecast." I just wanted to see what the weather was going to be like because, if the weather was good, I wanted to go fish.
Hey, that's what we're all about is fishing.
Exactly, we're fishermen.
The fishing's so good this time of year, you don't want to miss a minute if it's possible.
Exactly. I didn't want to miss not a single second of it. And don't get me wrong, I'm loving doing these lives and talking with everybody. But it really boils down to all of us are fishermen. This is what we love to do. So when we've been getting, pardon me for the use of the term, when we're getting handcuffed to the docks or handcuffed in our house where we can't go, when we get an opportunity, the weather's good, and we can squeeze out and go fishing, I'm going to go fishing. I don't care whether it's for pay, not for pay. I want to go fishing. So
I have to break your heart a little bit, and the heart of a lot of other people. At least I think it breaks everybody's hearts. But you want to know how much pressure there is on me to fish in May? I have been running charters. I've been working on charter boats and head boats since June 1966.
wow.
And on June 1st, after 40 years running a Dusky, I'm turning my boat back into Ralph Brown and canceling my slip at Miami Beach Marina, canceling my boat insurance, and I will be officially predominantly retired. So to not go fishing in May, the last month of a crazy schedule, is more painful than I can even think about.
I can only imagine. Now, has this been widely publicized that you're retiring June 1st?
Well, it's been on social media gradually, more and more over the last couple of weeks, and it's pretty much out there now.
Okay,
A
well,
lot of protests. They have about 100 people protesting back and forth in front of my condo, 8 days a week, 40 hours a day. So
is any of them code enforcement?
they're trying to shut me down early.
Oh my gosh. The protesters are trying to keep you open, and code enforcement's trying to keep you shut.
There you go.
There's so many people that are jumping in. I see Bouncer's a legend. Hello to the master. But one person in particular, I really want to give a shout out to, and I want to forward his message to you. He's a dear friend of mine. He was one of the judges in my tournament in Saudi Arabia. He's one of the fishermen and charter guys in the Maldives. And he says, "This is great. I am a big fan of Captain Bouncer Smith." So his name is Abdullah Anif, and he's one of the charter guys out of Maldives. So you have your legend truly encompasses the whole globe, which is really, really awesome.
Well, that's quite an honor. And for the young guy coming up, we should talk about how you become well known and popular. And a couple of things that are involved with that is be involved in conservation. I've been strongly involved with the International Game Fish Association, the Billfish Foundation, When the CCA first got started here, I was at the polling place all day on election day when they passed the constitutional amendment in the state of Florida to uh, ban the nets. And I've been to fishery commission meetings all over the eastern United States and done everything I could for the future benefit of fishing for all of us, not just for one group or another, but for the benefit of everybody. And then another thing that I learned way back when, there was a captain at the Castaways dock back in the 60s named Connie Myra, and Jim Hardy from the Miami Herald would call down to the dock and say, "Hey, I need 2 chairs to take me and my nephew fishing next week." And the way those boats were operated was they sold each chair individually, and 3 chairs they broke even, and 3 chairs they broke even, 5 chairs they made a little profit, and 6 they were doing really good. Well, everybody would tell Jim Hardy, "Well, yeah, we'd be glad to take you. It's so much per chair." Back then it was $15 or $17 a chair. And Connie Myra would hear that he was looking to go fishing, and she would get a hold of him right away and say, "Hey, Jim, come be my guest." Well, Connie took Jim as her guest. She still had 4 chairs sold, so she broke even, or actually made a little bit of money, and she got a half-page ad in the Friday or Sunday Miami Herald back when everybody read the papers. And it didn't cost her a cent because all he was doing was writing about the fun he had on her boat. So
That's awesome.
be good to the media people. If you get a chance to take Fly Navarro fishing, take him, because you'll get all the good exposure you could ever ask for.
I think that's why I get invited so much. I remember when this whole social media thing started going, and I had one person in particular online said something about, "All you do is post selfies." I go, "Really? Okay." So I ended up buying not a really expensive, but a really nice camera instead of just taking pictures on my cell phone. And I started taking pictures of everything else. And I know a lot of the places I go, even a couple of years ago when I went to Australia, we went right by the little Audrey when she hooked, caught, and harvested this grander blue marlin. And I got the whole thing. I must have taken, I don't know, somewhere around 2,000 pictures. And the captain of the little Audrey called up Spera, who's up in the tower with me, said, "Spera, did Fly get any pictures?" And I just nodded yes. And he repeated that, and he goes, "Ask Fly if he's willing to sell them." And he goes, "I don't even have to ask him. He doesn't sell his photos, but if you bring a hard drive over, he'll give them all to you." And that's what I do. I mean, I go to all these places, and my biggest thing is I want people to know what we do as fishermen. That's my biggest goal. There's a lot of kids out there nowadays that don't realize. I didn't know that this was an industry. I had no clue that you could be a fisherman. And on top of being a fisherman, you could also work at the marina. You could work on boats. You could paint boats. You could be a carpenter. It is a huge, huge industry. And the fact that today we have social media and the fact that we can connect with so many people worldwide, I want people to know what being us is all about. And that's a big deal to me.
I'll give you a prime example about how open the fishing industry is for opportunities. 2 young kids came to Miami from Bermuda, I guess 10 years ago or so, maybe even 12 years ago now. And one of them went back to Bermuda. One of them stayed here, and he putted around with this and that and the other thing. And he started doing minor repairs. "You need something fixed, give me a call." So we'd be running day and night, and I would call him up and I'd say, "Hey, the forward bilge pump is broken. The boat would be at the dock from 10 p.m. till 7 a.m. if you could come by and fix the bilge pump." And I'd get there in the morning, the bilge pump would be fixed, the broken parts would be laying on the dash. And then I called him up and I said, "Hey, the starboard running light went out, and that was fixed, and then it was a trim tab, and now this kid, his name's Ethan Gallo, and he's booked 6 days a week doing everything you can think of on a boat at people's houses. No, he has no shop. He has a truck and a tool bag and a helper, and they go to this guy's house and they fix a running light, and they go to that guy's house and they wire a whole stereo system. Then they go to the next guy's house and do the required service on his outboards, and the next boat's an inboard. And the kid is clean cut, pleasant, and loves to be mechanical and just having a ball.
That's.
And then on the 7th day, he goes fishing, just in case there's any question about it.
Hey, you got to stay in touch with your roots. That's the most important thing.
No doubt about it.
You have to.
One thing you got to watch about Ethan, though, don't ever ask him to fix your GPS, because the first thing he does is download your numbers on his memory card. So if he messes it up, he'll have your numbers to put back or in his own machine. You gotta watch those Marine Electronics guys.
Oh, that's so funny. That's hilarious. Now, I'm just going, just so you know, I've got 3 different screens going. I want to make sure I get to as many questions as I can. One of them in particular, I got to show a little love because he was on here earlier. Dominic Lacombe Jr. asked, how many people do you think you've been a part of their first billfish?
Holy cow, since about 2005, we've tagged about 2,000, and we only get tags in about 50% because we don't randomly throw tag sticks at them and hit them in the eye or the brain or something. So that's 4,000 sailfish. I've introduced sailfish to a lot of people, and I don't want to brag or anything, but my sister claims that when I come home at night, I hang from my feet in the closet and plug into a battery charger. But for every sailfish that I have released, I've probably released 2 or 3 tarpon.
Really?
Because, well, for 30 years, I ran 7 days a week and 5 evening trips a week. Now, the evening trips were only from October to June, but those months I ran 5 nights a week and 7 days a week.
Wow.
And I didn't know what taking the day off was until my current co-captain, and I might add one of the best I've ever had, A.B. Raymond, started making me take a day off. The guy before him, A.B. worked for me 7 days a week and 5 nights a week, and he was getting married and he quit because he couldn't work such a tough schedule. And the guy that replaced him was another great Nate, Billy Springer, said, Billy Springer said, well, I'll work 6 days a week, but I will not work 7, and I'm not going to work any nights. So I hired a night mate and a Sunday mate.
Oh my gosh.
And A.B. had been gone for 8 days, and he says, hey, wait a minute, why didn't you tell me I could work 6 days a week? I never would have quit. But but the second time A.B. came back with me, he finally convinced me that at 70 years old I should cut down to 6 days a week. And at 71, he convinced me to cut down to 5 days a week. And at 71 3/4, the tarpon fishing got so tough with the sharks and the redesign of their migration that I pretty much cut out the night fishing. And now, June 1st, I'll put my feet up and watch fly on the Facebook all day long.
Well, hopefully once this COVID ends, I'll be back out fishing and traveling all over. But I've had a lot of people ask me to continue doing this and bringing fishermen in from all over the world to tell their fishing stories. So I might have to take all this with me and do my interviews at 1 o'clock in the morning from some far out land.
Well, educate me a little bit. We're on live.
Okay.
If somebody wanted to watch this tomorrow. Could they watch this tomorrow, or is it
No,
one and done?
no. This is going to be on Facebook Land, and for those of you that are just joining in, and I don't know, so after I announced that, or should I say, after you announced that you wanted to come on, I got reached out, and I went from broadcasting on 5 Facebook pages, and I just jumped up to 10 Facebook pages.
Holy cow!
I'm also broadcasting on Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube. So, this is going to end up staying on here, on all these Facebook channels all over the place. And then the only thing I'm going to do different is I grabbed a picture earlier of you with this giant swordfish, and I'll just put that as a cover so people can find that. It doesn't just have my logo of the No BS. It'll have your picture on there so people say, "Oh, that's Capt Bouncer. I want to see his video." So it'll be creeping through Facebook land forever.
Awesome. Well, that's quite an honor.
It's it's funny. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Grosbeck. Peter, he's from San Diego. He ran the Ocean Pacific throughout all over the South Pacific in the 80s. And he's like, "How do you keep all this stuff straight?" And I said, "You know what? It's not much different than running a Garmin unit or just a regular. Once you learn it, the hard part for me when I first started all this at the beginning of the quarantine, I was on 2 cell phones in my driveway. Please, somebody just talk to me on Facebook. Please, please, please." And everybody was talking and we're sharing stuff. And then I'm like, there's got to be a smoother way. So during the day, number one, first thing I did is after I realized it's going to be more than 2 weeks, I better set up a little shop. So in the back of the house, in the Florida room, I sent up a little like a studio, and I started researching. I go, there's got to be one way from one camera to send it to everything. So I've little by little, every day I learn something new, or somebody calls me and says, "Hey, have you tried this?" And it's, you know what, it's no different than fishing. And really, everything I've done on social media in the last 5 years, I attribute it to what I've learned fishing. Oh, this worked? Let me try it twice. Let me try it 3 times. Oh, that doesn't work all the time. Let me try this. Call somebody up. Reach out. The new generation, the young generation of fishermen that are out there that know how to do all of this, they're willing to trade information on IT for fishing stories.
Yeah.
So I have, some people have seen the video. I interviewed a young man a couple of weeks ago. He's 11 years old, and he goes by the name on Instagram, Fish Like Tarzan. So yeah, and he's 11 years old, long blonde hair. He fishes, now that there's no school, he's fishing about 14 hours a day. So yeah, so it's a great way to pass information and fishing stories. And it's made what we've always done, the Coconut Telegraph. I mean, Eddie Herbert, that I fished with for 14 years, he'd call it the Coconut Telegraph, where there was so much information being passed back and forth to everybody. It's made it so much easier.
No doubt. I mean, hey, listen, when I was up and coming, well, at one point, it was so far back that in the major fishing magazines, there were 3 skiff guides listed from Key West to Palm Beach. And that was Bob Montgomery and was it Ron Green in Island Rod or Tavernier, and myself were the only guys listed in the magazine skiff fishing. And we had to figure out a lot of stuff on our own. Now I do seminars all the time at different tackle shops and fishing clubs, and the magazines call up all the time. Well, how do you do that? So we even have that print stuff still going around, and Steve Waters does a great job trying to keep a little bit of print in the Miami Herald. And we've got a TV fishing show on Saturday morning for a couple hours, and there's so many different ways to access these things. And critiquing what we're doing right now is here I sit in my easy chair, and I don't have a lure or a hook anywhere near me. As a matter of fact, I emptied all the tackle out of my den just a couple of days ago. There's nothing left in there for all intents and purposes to fish with. And you're sitting there live on screen, and I can't see your tackle box from here, but maybe it's right next to your elbow. But the fact of the matter is that we're cheating the public, because while we're talking and we talk a sea witch, I can't hold up a sea witch when I say a sea witch.
No.
And when I say a 3.5 drone spoon, I can't hold it up, or how to rig a planer in. And we all have to learn that these IT kids will tell you, when you're going to talk about a planer, have a planer in your hand.
Amen.
Or a sea witch, or whatever the subject may be, because then people watching this can learn so much more. Not that the BS stories aren't enough. And by the way, I have to check to see whose BS was first. Have you ever seen one of my stickers, my decals, or whatever you call them?
No.
I have the BS fishing team.
Really?
And then B, it spells out OUNCER.
Bouncer
and then the
Smith.
S, it spells it MITH. So I had the BS fishing team for quite a while now. I'm going to have to
you know what?
investigate what share of your show I'm going to have to
you may have me on trademark infringement.
Well, it'd be an honor to share it with you. So
I'll tell you what, my biggest thing where I went with the BS was, again, being stuck at home at the very beginning. You watch the news, all my trips have been canceled. None of the countries that I had planned to go fishing in were even open. So everything you see on social media and everything you start seeing on the news was such doom and gloom. And I'm like, I want to talk to people, and people are like, hey, did you hear about this? I go, listen, here, I don't want no politics, and I want no doom and gloom. We're talking about fish. You want to talk about what boat ramps are opening or not opening? I'm okay with that. That's information. But I don't want none of that political BS here. I don't care who you vote for as long as you go fishing. That's all I care about.
I'm getting so desperate to hear your laugh, because it's such a pleasure. You laughed, and I'm going to share a story with you relating to your camera.
Okay.
Just for the record, I went in the Everglades on a charter with A.B. Raymond before the COVID thing started, with my grandniece and nephew and my sister. And I was taking pictures left and right with my cell phone, and my niece had a tilapia or something on, and I went to lift it in the boat, and for the first time in over 20 years, I lost my phone overboard. So I lost all my pictures from the day. Everything else is backed up in the cloud, but that day. And you were talking about your camera before, so now I'm going to get a laugh out of you. This is going back 25 years ago. Two guys charter me to go fishing for the day. What would you like to do? And it's one guy's buying the trip for the other guy, and the guest of honor says, well, are there any tarpon around? I says, yeah, there's been some around. He said, well, I'd love to catch a tarpon. So the first drift in the morning right outside the government cut, we hook a 130-pound tarpon, and the guest of honor is fighting it, and he tells the host to grab his 35-millimeter camera and take pictures. So the host grabs a 35-millimeter camera, wraps a strap around his hand 3 or 4 times, and starts snapping away. And the guest of honor starts yelling at him, put the camera strap around your neck. And the host says, I got it wrapped around my hand 3 or 4 times, don't worry about it. Fly, the whole time they fought the fish, they fought about where the camera strap should be. I mean, it became a knockdown drag out. We caught the tarpon. The guest of honor says, take me back to the dock. He stormed off the boat with his 35-millimeter camera and all the rest of his gear, and said, hurry up, I'm leaving. And the other guy settled up with me real quick and took off after him. And here comes the host walking back head low. I says, what happened? He says, He drove off without me. So that's a pain. And by now I knew that they were staying in North Miami Lakes. And I says, well, I guess I'll take a cab back to Miami Lakes. He says, that's not the half of it. I took him fishing all day because he drove down from Orlando. We rented a U-Haul yesterday and we filled it up with all my mother's household, and he was driving me and my mother back to Orlando tonight, and he's driven off without me. And the guy went back to Orlando
Oh
all
my!
over the camera straps. So
Oh
make sure
my
your camera's
God!
tied down safely, will you?
That is so hilarious. It's amazing how many cool stories come from our sport. I tell so many people, they're like, they're always asking, and they ask me about what is it about fishing that you love so much. And I say most people are confused about fishing. They confuse fishing with catching.
Amen.
Catching is the actual act of catching that fish. Fishing is the time you spend with your friends and family in between catching. And that's what I love to do. Catching, don't get me wrong, I love to catch fish. I love the interaction with the fish. And it's that euphoric feeling. But as I've gotten older, the fishing is the time I spend with all my friends from all over the world and the memories that I take with me. Not just the pictures, but the memories that I take.
My sister's an avid fisherman. Not like you and me. She gets to go a few times a year. But she put this sticker on my wall in my den that says, it doesn't matter if you catch anything, it's the being there that counts.
Amen.
And there's nothing more true. And the people that you're with, so many guys, they get ready to go fishing and their kid comes up, Daddy, can I go? No, this is for the men. And the wife is going, goodbye, I'd sure love to go with you. And the fact of the matter is, if you go fishing by yourself, you can have a great memory, but you can never look back in 10 years and say, yeah, son, remember when you were knee-high to a grasshopper and we went out and you told all your buddies you caught that sailfish or that barracuda? When I won't go into the fact that I wound it in for you, son, but that's okay. You caught it to all your friends.
That's
and,
it.
And your buddies, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is, having people to share it with is what it's all about. Because, look at that cloud. It looks just like a XYZ, and oh, look at that sunrise and the sunset and the porpoise and the whale and the pelican diving. And how does he do that and not break his neck? I mean, it's all. Sharing it is so important.
That is the biggest thing. I tell this story a lot. The first time I went to go fish in Japan was back in 2016, and I got to fish the local tournament over there. And then there was another gentleman. He's a car dealer in Japan out of Nagoya. I met him at American Custom Yacht. He invited me to go fishing with him. By that time, I'd already been over there for about 10, 12 days, and I learned certain words to say in Japanese. Two of the words I learned how to say was billfish and dolphin. So I could say, oh, there's a billfish, or I can say, oh, there's a dolphin. So I figured I was on this boat. I was the only person that didn't speak Japanese, and I was the only person that spoke English. Nobody spoke English. But I had no problem with it. We're fishermen. We can get by. And
Sure.
So I'm like, I'm going to go sit up in the tower, and I'm going to call out fish. So I don't know, we've been fishing for about 2 hours. There's a blue marlin on the left long. So I said, well, billfish is good enough. Then I realized, you know what I didn't know how to say? Left or right. So when I yelled out billfish, instead of everybody looking in the spread, everybody looked up in the tower to see which way I was pointing.
That brings to mind a great story, Fly. I don't think we've ever fished together. And I don't know how often you've seen my boat, but I have been harassed for ages because all my rod holders are numbered. You get a guy from Ohio on the boat and you tell him there's a fish on the long kite He goes, which where's the long kite?
Yeah.
If you tell him there's a fish on number 1, he can usually figure it out. Well, I went to Cozumel, Mexico in 1975. I ran a boat down from Fort Lauderdale, and we got down there, and my mate didn't know how to say Buenos Dias. He didn't know how to say it when we left either. And the guy who charged us was a Mexican who spoke very good English. But his Mexican buddy spoke just a little bit of English. So, and I could order ice, beer, and eggs, but I couldn't manage bacon to go with it in Spanish. And I could say good morning and adios. But the Mexican who spoke good English, he came up on the bridge about an hour after we started fishing. He says, Captain Bouncer, we have a problem in the cockpit because you're hollering out left long, and we've never heard that expression, and you're right short. We don't know what that means. We're only allowed to fish 4 lines down here while you're here. So how about we number the rod holders 1, 2, 3, and 4? So we numbered the rod holders 1, 2, 3, and 4, and everybody worked out really, really good. And I learned to say Pez Vela and Dorado, and we were in like Finn. So I came back here to Miami, and I didn't number my rod holders, and numerous years later, I had a neurologist and a psychiatrist on the boat, and they fished with me a lot. And we're anchor fishing, and we've got 2 Finor 20s on the bottom and 2 spinning rods out as flat lines. And one of the bottom rods, the port bottom rod gets bit. So there's a bite on the bottom. The guy runs over and picks up the spinning rod. No, not that one, the other one. And he runs across the boat, grabs the other spinning rod. No, the bottom rod. And he grabs the wrong button. Well, the fish is gone by now. I got back that afternoon. I numbered all my rod holders. They've been that way ever since.
Oh, my God.
And the professionals laugh at me, and the amateurs think it's the smartest thing I ever did. So
it's perfect. I mean, and especially in the fact that day in and day out, you are dealing with brand new people to our sport. So they don't know what a flat line is. They don't know what a bottom rod is, but they know what the numbers are.
Every once in a while, they get fooled because I remember one trip in particular, I had 5 teenage boys on the boat. And we'd had a smooth day of fishing, no incidences. And in the afternoon, I hollered, there's a bite on number 2. And the guy's running around the boat. Where's number 2? Where's number 2? And the other ones are all cracking up because they're all looking at number 2. And flying not to lose you. But I just got this message. My battery's dying.
Oh.
So when we talk, I'll plug in my charger.
Let's plug it in. And that'll give me time to open up this little window here because you specifically asked me to remind you about a couple of questions. So I want to make sure I ask you those questions. And everybody, while we're waiting for Captain Bouncer to plug in his phone, don't forget if you can hit that share button, let everybody know what we're doing. And all of what we're sharing here with Captain Bouncer Smith. Give everybody an opportunity to see this. Talking in the No BS World Tour. So, okay, Captain Bouncer, let me open up this window here. You asked me, there was 2 things. You want to talk about, number 1, keep them wet.
It's keep fish wet.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't have to preach to the choir. You know.
You don't have to preach to me.
Fishing.
But please.
How poorly a fish is constructed to be held by the nose or the lower jaw or the tail and hung in midair. If you hold them by the tail, all their internal organs crush down into their throat. If you hold them by the throat, all their internal organs go to the bottom of their stomach cavity, and you're putting your hand right into their lungs for all intents and purposes. So keeping them wet is all about making sure that your billfish, it's against the law to take a billfish out of the water unless you intend to harvest it. That's a federal law.
Absolutely.
But you can get a great picture if if your mate holds the bill, the angler leans over the side next to the mate, and the cameraman gets back by the tail of the fish. You can get great pictures of billfish and tarpon shooting that kind of an angle. And the same thing applies to snook and tarpon and trout and all these bigger fish. We all love to take them out of the water, hold them up for a picture. But those of us who really care about the resource and we read the tagging reports and stuff have learned that, as an example, on white marlin, which I think are more durable than sailfish, if you take a white marlin and grab it by the bill, drag it through the tuna door, stick a hose in its mouth, put a satellite tag and a standard tag in that white marlin, slide him back out the tuna door, revive him, and send him on his way. In the Mid-Atlantic states, the scientists did that, and almost 50% of those white marlin never picked up or dragged over a cum board, never held up against a shirt, but almost 50% of those white marlin died. And they were treated as well as you possibly could,
gingerly,
if you were going to pull them into a boat for science. And just think what the odds are if you grab them by the bill, drag them over the covering board, hold them up against your shirt, plug in the charger on your phone, and then ridiculously use 5 different iPhones to take pictures of instead of taking the picture once and sharing it later. That fish is in bad, bad shape. It might swim away, but tomorrow it'll sink to the bottom. That's keep them wet. Trying to keep them as healthy as possible.
What a lot of people don't understand when they look at a fish and they look at a fish's skin, they think their skin is like ours, but the truth is it's not their skin that protects them, it's the slime outside of their skin. And when you're dragging them in over the covering board, onto your shirt, on holding them, number one, like you said, all their internal organs getting crushed. Now you've literally took off 50% of their protective layer, and you've put them, it's almost like having road rash, falling on the asphalt, taking off 50% of your skin. Now you're putting them into a bacteria-rich environment, only for them to die slowly.
Hey, listen, Fly, you and I both know if you're catching goggle eyes for next week's tournament and they fall on the deck, you throw them overboard because they're no good.
Absolutely.
So then why would you abuse your sailfish worse than you would abuse your goggle eye?
Amen.
It's just not relating the durability to a fish to what we know about the durability of a fish.
And and this is just my personal opinion. I think this is an education problem. There's a lot of people that just don't know, because I know a lot of places where I've gone, and we've talked about all the cameras and pictures and this and that. For the longest time, I used to carry around an 18-foot selfie stick, so you can put this selfie stick with a GoPro on it offshore the boat, keep the blue marlin in the water, and you get a picture of the entire crew, your blue marlin, and the fish never comes out of the water. And people, until you explain it to them like this, they're like, wow, I really never understood that. And it's education. Once you start letting 10 or 20 people know, and they let 10 or 20 people know, it takes some time, but it gets out there, and we have to continue educating our new fishermen out there.
And what's really, really great about it is, in so many cases, that novice that we take out on the charter boat, or that observer that rides along on the boat, is so much more attuned to immediately picking up these things to the hardened fisherman.
Amen.
And it's very gratifying. When we started to push people to go circle hook fishing, the weekend warriors adapted to circle hooks much faster than the professionals. And today, 90% of the fishermen would rather use a circle hook than a J hook day in and day out, because it's a prime example of teaching people what works better. And if we teach them how to treat their fish better, then they'll have more snook, more rainbow trout, more sailfish, whatever it is they're treating with the respect that the fish need. And it's so gratifying. that so many people are catching on to that stuff.
So that's going to lead. That's going to segue me into a question that was sent to me. Somebody wanted to know, how did you get so good at inshore and offshore fishing?
I mentioned it before. I only fish 100 hours a week. And if the sailfish aren't biting, I got to do something to stay entertained. So I figure out how to catch more groupers and snappers. And if the current's too fast for groupers and snappers, I have to figure out how to do better at catching sailfish. And if the wind's blowing too hard to go in the ocean, then I got to figure out how to catch fish in the bay. And when you do it 54 years full time, and all through high school and junior high school, and even as a kid in elementary school, every chance I got, some of it's going to stick. And I've just been so blessed. I've had so many people willing to share their knowledge with me, and I've always been glad to give it back. And it's that Coconut Telegraph again, and we just all gain from it every day. And God, it's been such a great run.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing you had asked me to talk about was the South Florida Marlin Tournament.
This is really, really exciting. Now, I told you we caught a blue marlin last Saturday, and there's been more and more blue marlin being seen again off of South Florida, where we haven't seen very many in quite a while. And I can't remember his whole, but it might be J. Patrick Burnett.
It's Bruce Burnett.
Bruce Patrick Burnett.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
He has been championing a South Florida Marlin tournament for 2001, and he's been taking input from people like I said, keep it in Florida. That means no more than 25 miles offshore. Ray Rocher's gotten involved with it. I've been sharing tips with him on my thoughts about it, but we're looking forward to a probably late April, early May South Florida Marlin tournament next year, and it could really, really be exciting with a little bit of luck.
Is there any possibility that you may come out of retirement for that?
I'm only semi-retiring.
Okay.
I'm going to be standing on the jetties at Government Cut with my thumb sticking out, trying to hitch a ride with somebody. So.
Oh, okay. So
I wouldn't want to miss that for sure.
So you're saying you're like Brett Favre. You're not ruling anything out.
Well, the difference is that there won't be a Bouncers Dusky anymore.
Okay.
But Bouncer on the VHF radio might still be an irritant at times.
I don't know about an irritant. Now, let's being that you brought up Bouncers Dusky, let's circle this around, because I know the couple of times that you've jumped in on our lives, I've said it, and I talked to Peter Chabonsai the other day, and I was just telling my girlfriend today when I told her I was going to be that you were going to be joining us here in the No BS. My father actually bought a Dusky because of you. So, so I hope you got that check. I really do. I hope you got that commission. I don't know if it's true. I hope you got that commission. But tell us how you got involved with Dusky.
In 1979, a guy called me. I was doing a lot of teaching people how to fish on their own small boats. And a guy called me up and he said, I heard that I could hire you to be my captain whenever I come to Miami to go fishing. I said, that's correct. What do you want to fish for? He says, I want to fish for tarpon and sailfish. I said, well, I'm very good at both. I'll be glad to do it. So a few days before Christmas 1979, he told me to meet him at the Dusky factory in Dania Beach. And I said, how will I know you in the parking lot? He says, I'll probably be the only guy there with a yellow Rolls Royce. He says, how will I know you? I says, I'm sure I'll be the biggest guy in the parking lot. So we took delivery of his Dusky 256 with a 235 horse Evinrude, And I ran it over to Dry Marina, and we got over there and unloaded his Rolls Royce of all his rods and reels, and we started fishing together. And the first day we went fishing was either December 23rd or 24th, and it was 4 to 6 foot seas. We're in a 25-foot boat, and we caught a big blackfin tuna about 10 in the morning. And he says, "So what do you think of my boat?" And I said, "I want to write a first refusal to buy it if it ever goes up for sale." And then I ran it constantly all that winter. We took it to Key West. Went to the Bahamas. We were on the boat constantly all that year. It's like I owned it, but I didn't own it. And 15 months later, he calls me up and he says, "I have to sell my boats, and you're going to have to buy this boat now." And I said, "Well, I can't afford it." And he says, "How much money you got in the bank?" I said, "Not much." He says, "Give me half of the money you have in the bank and take me fishing for half price for as long as I can fish." And we fished that way for well over 20 years.
Wow.
So I got a really good deal on my first Dusky, and I've been thrilled with Duskies ever since. And from that boat, I made good friends with Ralph Brown, who owns Dusky. And when I was ready to step up to a different model, he was extremely receptive, and he's been my biggest member he's been the president of my fan club for 40 years. So we've done a really good job for each other, and I send him a check whenever he sends me a check. So it's done a great run.
Ah, that's perfect. Now, you also have a similar relationship with Evinrude, correct?
My dad was an amazing man. He had 4 children. My older sister and my father built a fiberglass 14-foot rowboat from scratch to fish in Michigan. So my older sister built a boat with my dad. My dad and I, in 1962, we built a 16.5-foot side console runabout with a 40-horse Evinrude, and it was aluminum. And if you've ever bucked a rivet, you know, you hold a steel bar up against the dead end of a rivet, and somebody on the other end has a jackhammer, and they crush the rivet. It's actually an electric jackhammer type thing that crushes the rivet. So the boat was upside down, and I would be inside this aluminum bell, and my dad would be running the rivet gun on the outside until this 16.5-foot boat was finished. And we put that 40-horse Evinrude on it, and it gave us years and years of service. Now, my little sister was a girly girl, so she never built a boat. But my little brother was a crackerjack welder, and he and my dad welded up a 27-foot single diesel tunnel drive. African Queen would be a best description for it. But 3 of his 4 kids built boats with my dad, and it was quite a great thing. And it was my introduction to Evinrude, and I've been a devout Evinrude man ever since. And in this day and age, with so many 4-cycle engines, I run 300 horsepower Evinrudes, and I get better mileage than I've ever gotten with any engine, including the one period where I had to run Suzuki's for Ralph Brown. I got better mileage with these Evinrudes. We have routine maintenance is every 500 hours, and the 2 strokes are lighter and a quicker hole shot. So still today, if I was going to have an engine, it'd be an Evinrude, and it would doggone sure be a Dusky. The Duskies are really well built, and they were built by fishermen for fishermen, and really, really 2 great products I've been proud to be with all these years.
Awesome. Now, I'm trying to think, because there's so many things I could ask you, and you did mention that we've never fished together, but I've fished next to you quite a bunch, catching bait at the range marker and stuff like that, and offshore all the years that I worked with Captain Eddie on the Reel Tight. So Have you always been based there out of Miami Beach?
Well, through my history, the first full-time job I had was at Pier 5 in downtown Miami.
Okay.
And then before that in high school, high school was pretty funny. I worked so many nights on the headboats on school nights that my dad finally called up the Tiki 2 and told the mate at night, Gene Gammon, that if they took me fishing on a school night, like that night was, that my father would be standing on the dock with the police to have him arrested for contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Oh my gosh.
So my dad put a damper on my weeknight fishing for a while. But at any rate, I started at the Newport Pier, which back when I started was Sunny Isles Pier. I actually had the job as the primary bait man all one summer when I think I was 13, maybe 14. I worked on the headboats from then all the way through high school. I went to Pier 5 and went to work on a headboat. And shortly thereafter, Tommy Silvano came down and says, any of you kids know how to wrap wire? And I said, damn straight, we're all real good fishermen. Of course we know how to wrap wire. He says, well, I need a mate tomorrow. You're going with me. And I says, oh boy, that's great. So I started work. I worked on the headboat from 5 in the afternoon till 2 in the morning. And I worked on charter boats from 7 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. And that was 6 days a week. But that's okay, because on my day off, I drove down and fished off the bridges in the Keys. Didn't want to lose out on any fishing time. And then I went back to the Castaways and got my captain's license. And I got my captain's license on March 13th and ran my first charter without a mate on a 45-foot sport fishing boat on March 14th. Half a day trip, we caught a kingfish and an 8-foot hammerhead shark, and I was off and running.
Wow.
So I spent a couple of years at BMR. I spent a couple of years at Bud and Mary's in the winter times, and I also had the pleasure for 5 years of fishing Ocean City, Maryland in the summers and South Florida in the winters. And I ran a boat to St. Thomas, ran a boat to Cozumel, gave sword fishing lessons in Italy. Just been real. Oh, and we run a swordfish tournament. We've run a swordfish tournament in the Cayman Islands for 14 years, and just having a ball. My shortcoming is that when everybody was discovering all these new great places in the world, like Australia and Costa Rica and Guatemala and all that, I was a proud father, and my father was more important to me than traveling. So I did miss out on a lot of that West Coast, Central America, and further out and beyond, like my brother from another mother, Skip Smith, certainly pioneered, and I did all of my big game fishing in the world through the eyes of Skip Smith and many other great fishermen of the day.
Cool. Now, I have a question, and I don't want to ignore him because he's asked the same question twice. And if you want to talk about brother from another mother, I got Eric Leach that's asked the same question. Him and I fished together for 9 years with Captain Eddie on the Real Tight. He has asked, are you going to be writing any more books?
Well, for those who don't know, I've finished 2 books. I really shouldn't say that I write books. I have a recording device on my phone, and I record an adventure. And then I email it to a very respected local writer by the name of Pat Mansell. He's got 20 books of his own, including Living Legends and Big Game Fishing, and the Bimini Twist series of fishing adventure books. But at any rate, I send my recordings to Pat. Pat turns them into the English language. I check to make sure the names and dates are changed to protect the innocent, and send them back, and he edits them, and then he sends them to Amazon, and Amazon publishes them and prints them. He's the Patrick Mansell is our official publisher. Amazon prints them and sells them. So we have 2 books out, and I have just about enough chapters for a third book. So I might be just a blithering idiot the rest of my life.
Well, you know what? There's your answer, Pork Chop. He was asking, and there's a tons of questions coming in, and I can't answer them all. And I'm usually really big on the shout outs, but I like the stories. I don't want to interrupt. Now, Pork Chop says, and for the life of me, I can't remember. Did you fish with us on the Real Tight in St. Thomas?
Okay, I'm embarrassed.
You don't remember?
No, I did fish on the Real Tight.
You did? Okay.
I sat up on the bridge with Eddie.
Okay.
And it's the only day in my life that I've had the pleasure of bait and switch for blue marlin.
Really?
And what an exciting, exhilarating experience that was. That year I was an observer in the Boy Scout tournament.
Okay.
And I also blessed the fleet for the Boy Scout tournament. And we fished on the lay day on the Real Tight with Jim and Pete from the Ship's Cafe, Pete Duenas.
Pete Buenas.
And some boat builder from Pompano. I think his first name is Roy, maybe, and maybe his last name's Merritt.
I call him the Godfather.
What an experience that was to be. And it's so embarrassing. I think Eric Leach was on the boat.
Yeah, it would have been Joe, Eric, and myself. And I'm glad he remembered it, because once you said it was during the Boy Scout, now it starts adding up. But if you stayed on the bridge all day long, that's probably why I don't remember too much about it, because as you can remember, there's a lot of laughing and giggling and fun making on that boat. I mean...
And to be honest with you, I got on the boat, and I went in the cabin, and we immediately shoved off. And I went from the cabin to the fly bridge, and never came off the fly bridge till we were back tied up at the dock. And then you guys were running around getting the boat all cleaned up, and didn't get to socialize with the crew very much. But I think when we got back to the dock, I did spend a few minutes in the salon with Jim Lambert and Roy Merritt and Pete Duenas, and just I was so in the clouds that day with the honor of getting to fish the crew on the Real Tight and those three great fishermen that I was just at a loss for words. I mean, it was really such a great honor. And it's always been dear in my heart.
We always had a good time, and I there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of Big Jim. For me, he was such an inspiration, not just in fishing, but in everything, how to deal with people, how to deal with situations. And there were so many crossovers on fishing that I've been able to take into life because of him. It just, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him. And it's funny because when you were talking about your tarpon trip, for a moment there, I thought that maybe you were talking about his son Danny, that used to charter you quite often.
Oh boy, we have some good trips with him. And what's his big buddy's name? Is his big buddy name Big John?
Big John.
Yeah. Boy, we had so much fun tarpon fishing. They were there in the heydays of some of our best tarpon fishing, and it's really sad because if we had that kind of tarpon fishing today, and I called Dan up, he would drop everything
in a heartbeat
to come down and go fishing. But we don't have that tarpon fishing anymore. The bull sharks and the dredging and the migratory patterns and climate change, they've all changed tarpon fishing so much that it went from the only thing I really, really wanted to do to I hardly even want to do it anymore. It's changed so much.
Wow, that's a shame.
And to not have the good old days kind of seems like why spoil great things to me. So I've turned it over to the young guns. The young guns with their bay boats and their electric trolling motors are still doing really good on the tarpon. But they have to fight with bridge pilings and docks and everything else. And in our heyday, we could fish light tackle and the tarpon had no place that they could get in trouble, and we had no predators. So it was really, really a great day for tarpon fishing.
You know, you talk about in the heyday or back in the good old days. In about 20 years, they're going to say these were the good old days.
Why? I disagree with you on that one.
You disagree?
Yes, because today we have a lot of young people. Now, the middle-aged guys, they have some problems, but we have a lot of young people that are very in tune with conserving our planet and conserving our fish. And these young people, with the right effort and the right directions, will bring many things back to a much better level than today.
You think so?
They are the driving force that'll say that we can't develop any more shoreline unless we replace it with healthier shoreline, and we can't pollute. You know, it's a tragedy. The I forget what it's called, but at any rate, the grass beds of Indian River, the grass beds of North Biscayne Bay. Fortunately, right now, Everglades, Florida Bay is doing much better, but the red tides on the west coast of Florida, basically from Tampa around the south end of the state, all the way back up to Sebastian Inlet and even beyond, our shoreline areas have taken a severe hit in just the last few years. And these young people today, and they're not all young, because look at Captains for Clean Water. They're doing fantastic work.
Absolutely.
To try to get things turned in the right direction, to stop the excessive runoff, to stop the weed eater thing, Roundup, that's killing all the bay grasses. And then you got the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, and you got the Billfish Foundation and the International Game Fish Association. All these people are striving for a better future. And if they can get the politicians to understand that we, the people, vote, and that's every kid from 18 to 88, then maybe we can get some of it turned around to where tomorrow will be much better than today.
Well, you know what? From your lips to God's ears. Because growing up, I always heard people say the good old days, and you know what? These are some pretty good days we have. I mean, it's what you make of it. I have another question.
They only caught a high of 75 sailfish in one day this year, and there's a kid, Russ Clippinger. He caught over 1,000 tarpon last year, and I was talking to Nick Smith yesterday about the thousands and thousands of striped marlin off of
Mag Bay.
Yeah, there are some great days today, and I know that these kids of today will make it better for tomorrow. You have to remember, I come from a generation where we killed everything, and if we didn't eat it, it made great fertilizer for the plants around the house. And trucks would leave from the Castaways charter boat dock, 2 trucks at noon, 2 trucks in the afternoon, stacked higher than the cab, with the tailgate open, full of sailfish and sharks, to be hauled off to a tallow factory after the taxidermist took the measurements off the fish. And then sometimes at night they'd have to send 2 more trucks to finish the cleanup to get all the fish off the docks.
Wow.
And at Captain Harry's Fishing Supply, they run a slideshow there all the time. And I have a slide of them that I ask them to put them up just to remind myself of how blinded we were years ago, where I'm in a picture, I'm a kid, but we have a piece of conduit pipe, I don't know, conduit's about 10 or 12 feet long, that's solid sea trout, and another conduit pipe behind it that's solid redfish, and some shark jaws, and a dead tarpon, and some dead jack crevalles. And that was when I was a kid. But ever since the late 60s, early 70s, I've become a champion of conservation. And I'm damn proud of it. And it comes from making such a big mistake when I was younger. And the kids today, they're starting off in the right direction. They're worried about protecting the future of their fishery. So I say the future's nothing but better.
Well, I like to hear that. I like to hear that. And talking about conservation, I want to bring up, and I can see it on my other screen that's not being broadcast, but you have a Billfish Foundation award behind you. Tell us a little bit about the work you've done with the Billfish Foundation. You've had, not only have you tagged, you mentioned between, I believe, between 2005 and now, you've tagged 4,000 sailfish, but how many have you had recaptured?
No, let me correct your numbers a little bit. In that time period, we've tagged almost 2,000.
Okay.
We've caught in the neighborhood of 4,000. And just a week, 10 days ago, we had a really, really super exciting catch. We caught a sailfish that had a tag in it. And almost 2,000 sailfish tagged and released. This was the only one that we tagged and we recaptured. And we were fighting this fish, and it got close, and Captain A.B. Raymond said, there's a tag in this fish. So we took our time, we got a hold of the bill, we cut the tag off, we put in a new tag, and we had tagged that sailfish 3 years and 16 days prior, and it had gone from an estimated 40 pounds to an estimated 70 pounds.
Wow.
So that was really, really something.
That is cool.
And when you talk about recaptures, my neatest recapture log are two. I tagged 5 swordfish with a gentleman from Belgium. And 3 of those fish were recaptured. And one of them was recaptured, I think it was 5 years later. And it had gone from an estimated 50 pounds to over 300 pounds. And then another really, really awesome recapture was with dolphin fish. In one school of dolphin in November, we tagged 5 fish, all in the same school. One was recaptured off of Stewart, one was recaptured off of Palm Beach, and one was recaptured off of Key West.
Wow.
All from the same original school. All, like 10-pound fish. And then here's one that'll really tell you why you throw back baby dolphin. We tagged the dolphin estimated at 4 pounds in June. 18 months later, that dolphin was recaptured on the south side of Puerto Rico out of Ponce, and it weighed 58 pounds.
Whoa! 18
months, 54-pound weight gain.
Wow.
There's a lot to be learned from tagging. If you don't have a tagging system on your boat, put one on your boat. But if you're going to tag fish, do it right. Don't be tagging them in the eye or the brain or the gills. We caught a swordfish that was tagged in the gills in Panama City, Florida, and the gill plate actually grew around the tag, not like a hole, but an indent in the gill plate, so the gill plate could close all the way. But that fish was tagged in Panama City, off of Panama City, Florida, and we caught it off of Miami. So
wow. How long was he at large?
I want to say that fish was at large for less than 2 years, if my memory serves me right.
Okay.
And when we caught it, it was about 150 pounds.
That's pretty. Every tag tells a story.
There's a lot of evidence that swordfish grow 30 to 50 pounds a year a lot of times. But conversely, here's a couple interesting stories about sailfish. We tagged a sailfish, and John Brownlee and Greg Bogdan recaptured it on TV in Palm Beach. And we tagged it, we estimated it at 40 pounds. And they caught it 3 or 4 years later, and they estimated it 40 pounds. So the consensus of opinion is that was a adult male sailfish, and no matter how long he lived, he would not get much bigger than 40 pounds. Conversely, we tagged the sailfish off of Miami, and we estimated it at 30 pounds, and the Lisa L., another Miami charter boat out of Key Biscayne, recaptured that fish 5 years later, and they estimated it over 70 pounds. So that fish had more than doubled in size, and had gotten really heavy. Well, that consensus of opinion is that was a female, and the females tend to keep growing much longer and get much heavier, which would only be natural for carrying a belly full of eggs a lot of the time of the year.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But, if you really want to learn a lot about fish, get involved in a tagging program, because then every time one of your fish are recaptured, they let you know what it's been up to, and it's really fun.
It's anytime I've gotten a tag back, I've always enjoyed it. Just imagining which highway did he take to get there?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And then with satellite tags, oh my gosh, the things that are going on with them. We've done a lot of. We did a sailfish tagging program with Eric Prince. Eric went out with Jimbo Thomas on the Thomas Flyer, and we caught a sailfish, and they came over and got our sailfish, and they put a satellite tag in it for 7 days. And Jimbo caught him a sailfish, and they put a satellite tag in it for 30 days. And so they were both caught almost within an hour of each other, right off of Key Biscayne, Florida. In 7 days, our fish was due south of Lucaya. In 7 days, Jimbo's fish was due south of Lucaya. In 30 days, Jimbo's fish was 200 miles east of Hole in the Wall.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So, and both fish were the same place in 7 days. Odds are both of those fish took the Bahamas Channel out into the open Atlantic Ocean and just kept right on going. So it's amazing what fish will do. They tag blue marlin in the Caribbean, and they show up in Africa, and they were talking this morning on a show about tagging a black marlin in Panama, and then when the tag released less than a year later, the fish was 3,000 miles away in the middle of the Pacific. So
wow,
a lot of new stuff can be learned from tagging.
We satellite tagged that blue marlin in St. Thomas, and in 30 days he went, I think, 1,300 miles. He ended up going to the coast of Brazil from St. Thomas. Something? Yeah, in 30 days. It was something ridiculous. We tagged 5 fish in 2 days, and they all went different directions. But that particular one ended up going to Brazil.
Well, that's a... People say, well, what's the big deal? You've been tagging sailfish since, who knows, the 50s or the 40s, whatever it is. I know that they caught a sailfish in the Gulf of Mexico that had been was an adult when it was tagged, and it was at large for 12 years before it was recaptured. And that fish was extremely significant because it was recaptured in the mid-60s. And at that point, the scientists were telling us, don't bother releasing sailfish. They're like mahi-mahi. They only live 3 or 4 years. So releasing them doesn't do any good. And then they recaptured this fish that was adult and at large for 12 years. And all of a sudden, the scientific community said, hey, we were wrong. It really pays to release your sailfish.
Well, at least they changed their mind.
That was the spaghetti tag. But what we learned today with the satellite tags, and those dolphin that we tagged were spaghetti tags, and we taught the scientists that in the fall, dolphin migrate south along the Florida coast, and we had the first fish that was tagged in Florida and recaptured in the Caribbean. So even those spaghetti tags still teach a lot. So And one of the things about tagging, when you tag a fish in the Caribbean or in Florida or the Mid-Atlantic states, and it turns up in Africa or the Mediterranean Sea or Brazil or wherever it goes in the Pacific, that's ammunition that can be used when the Billfish Foundation or any representative of the United States goes to ICAT and says, those are not Africa's blue marlin, those aren't Brazil's white marlin, those are everybody on the Atlantic Ocean's marlin.
Absolutely.
And therefore, they have to be treated as a shared property. And that gives you a lot of strength when you're trying to get countries to limit their harvest from long lining or driftgill nets or whatever travesty they're using this year.
Absolutely. And I'm not on ICAT yet. They've been trying to get me on ICAT. I've been on the HMS advisory panel for 5 years now. And because of all my traveling and because of the fact that I speak 2 languages, we need you on ICAT. And it's like, if you guys have a yearly schedule, a year in advance, it would be so much better. You guys don't make plans that far in advance.
Well, come on now. If they held ICAT in Mauritius and Madeira and maybe at Lizard Island, you could tell them where to hold the meetings.
Then I could do it.
Then you could attend the meetings on Monday and Tuesday and fish the other 5 days a week.
I was in Cairns getting ready to fly to China to speak in China, and I got a phone call from a couple of guys that ICAT while I was in Croatia, and they're like, hey, this country says that they have 0 recreational fishing. Is it true? And I immediately send them some pictures of some of the boats that I knew that I know. They're friends of mine that they fish there. They're like, no, here that is. They definitely fish in that country recreationally.
Where is Croatia in relation to salt water?
Okay, Croatia is on the Mediterranean.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. They have a...
That would be east of Italy then?
It would be east of Italy. It would be east
west of Turkey?
I'd have to look. I believe, if I'm correct, Croatia is literally the country just east of Italy, where you have the boot, you have the Croatia, so, if I'm correct.
Top of the Aegean Sea.
Yeah.
Lots of bluefin tuna country.
Absolutely.
That's how I've been fishing all my life, and I don't know anything about Croatia big game fishing. If they'd asked me, I would have gone, duh.
I've actually, with some of the guys from NOAA, they've reached out to me, and they want to do some satellite tagging in Egypt, Croatia, I believe Syria. They're like, can you line this up for us? I says, if you give me your dates, I need some time, but I have contacts throughout that whole region that we can go fishing with and satellite tag bluefin tuna.
Have you interacted with Tony DeJulian or Martini Rossi at all?
It's funny because Tony's on here watching us right now. He actually asked me what time we were going live so that he can make sure he can join us, and he is. Good bluefin fishing in Croatia, he says.
Well, the reason I ask is that Tony DeJulian and Martini Rossi have done a major satellite tagging project here in South Florida, and they were supposed to go to the Red Sea, but they got shut down by the COVID-19. They're supposed to do a project in off of Washington State, tagging the swordfish out there, and we were supposed to go to the Cayman Islands, shot down by COVID-19, but the Martini Rossi's teacher or leader in Washington State has the best logarithms for translating satellite tags into the travels of spearfish and swordfish, the best logarithms available today for translating the satellite tags. And if you haven't dealt with that guy, maybe Tony could type up his name for us because I can't remember it. But Tony's been very involved with it. And Martini Rosvicki is a doctor of fishery science and a young man that I've fished since he was 5 years old. But they're doing great things with satellite tagging of billfish and the best logarithms for working it out. Martini worked really hard on the Hawaiian blue marlin tagging projects. Was it Barbara Bach? Is out of Stanford, or do you remember?
Is it Barbara Block?
I think below.
Yeah,
I
Block.
think so. Out of Stanford.
Yeah, I believe she is out of Stanford.
Well,
she does all the bluefin tagging.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same lady or not. It might be, but at any rate, Martini's been very involved in the satellite tagging programs. Like I say, the Great Marlin Race, spearfish work, and swordfish work, and they'd be great to be in touch with when you start tagging those bluefins in the Mediterranean.
So Anthony's jumped on here. He said he went to the Red Sea first trip and caught a sword and tagged the first ever sailfish with a spot tag in January. Second trip was delayed till 2021. University of Washington and Woods Hole and Koust, which is King Abdullah's university. And the reason I know that because I helped put on the first ever international sport fishing tournament just north of Koust in Cake in Saudi Arabia in the Red Sea last year. And I was supposed to help be doing right now, getting ready to put on the second ever international fishing tournament in Saudi Arabia, but COVID-19 shut us down.
Oh, this will be a year we remember how much we did learning at home.
Exactly. Well,
great times.
Well, Bouncer, on that, we're gonna start wrapping it up. You don't hang up on me. I'm just gonna say, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Really thank everybody for your questions. If I missed your questions, I'll try to swing back around, or maybe if Bouncer has a minute, he can do it. We had lots of questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I can't thank everybody enough. If you could hit that share button so everybody can see this conversation with Captain Bouncer Smith. It's been incredible. And thank you so much for everything you've done in our industry and all the great stories you've just shared with us. And I'm sure that's not even 1% of your fishing stories. So
well, I think that we should put up a campaign that all those listeners should tell you they want me to come back after I retire in June, because you'll be busy, but I'll be sitting around with nothing to do.
Well, there you go, guys. Let's put Captain Bouncer in charge of the No BS World Tour. Can I get an amen? Because Captain Bouncer is the original No BS, or actually the BS.
Nobody could ever replace you, Fly. You're the greatest man that's ever walked the face of Facebook live shows, and I want to ask everybody to give you a big electronic high five for all the great work you've done with the Billfish Foundation and being MCs at all the award situations and the World Marlin Tournament and just the World Swordfish Tournament. Everything you've done for the future of fishing, you really deserve a huge round of applause from the whole world.
I appreciate that.
Can't thank you enough for having me on.
I appreciate that very
sharing some
much.
time with me.
No, thank you. And everybody, thank you so much. And we will catch you tomorrow. Oh, no. I'm going fishing tomorrow. No BS tomorrow. I'm going I'm going tile fishing and sword fishing. So everybody.
Well, the first BS is going fishing tomorrow too, so they're all going to have to suffer through Sunday.
Perfect. So, Bouncer, hang tight really quick. Everybody, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. Peace out, y'all.